welcome to my podcast, The Power to Speak, the podcast. Charles Edward Pogue, dramatist, raconteur, and gentleman of leisure. Thank you so much for your time today. I've got so much that I'd love to talk to you about. So, can we start at the beginning?
Sure.
I know you're in Kentucky at the moment. Is that
Right.
is that where you started life?
My people came in with Daniel Boone and, blazed the trails in the state. I mean, there are Pogue cabins not 50 miles from where I am in Lexington here. So yeah, it's kind of the Pogue legacy. And I grew up, I was born in Cincinnati, which is right across the river from Kentucky, and grew up in northern Kentucky and went to school here in Lexington at the University of Kentucky. So yeah, I am a Kentucky boy.
Wow. And so when did the writing bug get you? When did you start writing?
I think I always wanted to be either a writer or an actor. Once I got past the childhood ambitions of I want to be a cowboy fireman. And I don't think I ever really wanted to be a fireman. Cowboy, maybe. But I remember, some of the earliest stuff I used to do, I used to write stories and draw pictures and things like that. And so it was very, very early on that bug sort of hit me. I think somewhere way back then I knew at least the writing aspect of that was going to was an ambition. The acting, because I was very shy as a young man, it took a while for that to come forth.
Yeah, but was it easy enough at school to be a writer? Were the teachers and because over here, creativity in schools is something that they kind of try to put into a corner. And sometimes
I think I was encouraged, particularly very young. I was legendary in the second grade for my book reports of Dr. Seuss, and things like that. I can say that I was encouraged. I did, as I got older into high school and things like that. They'd say, go write a poem, go write a short story. That kind of formality was sort of restrictive to me. I wanted to go off and write a novel or something. It was I don't think it showed itself to my best advantage at that time. But again, I was not discouraged in any way. The creativity was always kind of encouraged.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. So when did it change from writing to drama?
I tried out for the senior class play, got the lead, and said, "Oh, well, this is pretty easy. Maybe I should do this." But I think I had been a movie nut. Growing up, I probably watched from 12 to 20 movies a week, and this was before VCRs and DVDs and all that. So you caught them. If you had to set your alarm at 3:00 for Maltese Falcon to see the Maltese Falcon, you set your alarm to watch them too. But so I immersed myself in that milieu, and so the yearning was kind of always there. It just took a while for me to get over the shyness. But I think, like so many actors, it was a thing where, you get on stage, suddenly you just bloom, and that comes out, and it's like, it's a different part. It's not real life. Suddenly you're doing something, this other creature comes up.
Yeah. Oh, and I know. You say yearning. That is. I remember having a yearning when I was about 14. Yeah. I can remember going to the theatre, and I think it was at Elvis. It was about Elvis, the musical, and this churning in my stomach that I just wanted to be up there. Is that kind of the feeling that you're talking about?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and again, it was watching movies more for me. I got into theater because I wanted to be in movies, and then found out what I really loved was theater, I think, more than movies. But it's just, you know, I loved the stories. I loved the language. I was really, you know, which again, I probably plays to my writer part of me, and just, you know, be able to rattle off dialogue like Humphrey Bogart or Ronald Colman or somebody like that. You know, it was just a magic thing for me. You know, and, I wanted my pencil mustache like Errol Flynn, and yeah, I probably wanted to be Errol Flynn. You know,
Right.
go around with a cape and a sword and swagger. You know.
Yeah. There's something about acting, isn't there? That's it's like playing for adults. You know.
Yes, it is. I mean, you know, it always amazes me that people try to make it this mystical thing, and it is in a way. It does have its mysticism, but it is basically just pretend. You know, just you know, how would you do this? How would you say this if this was the situation you were in?
Yeah.
And it's, I think sometimes people try to make it harder than it is to try and justify it, but it's. You know, it has its arduous part, but it's, you know, it's not well, it is magic sometimes.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I've been working with adults, I suppose, for the last sort of 8-9 years, and you know, just people that want to do some kind of drama or work on a play or devise something, you know, and you know, 2 hours in a room once a week, and they come out like, you know, they find the inner child, they sort of, you know, come out thinking it was sort of some kind of therapy for them.
there are some of them, you know, they step on a stage and suddenly everything that was natural becomes totally unnatural, and you go,
Yeah,
how does that happen?
yeah. That is strange. That's a strange thing, and I think that's the difference between, you know, the people that go to a drama school and study for 3 years, is to kind of get rid of that somehow.
Yeah.
So did you go to a drama school? Did you?
No, I majored in theater at the University of Kentucky. Now, I started out in communications because I thought I was going to be a writer, and I didn't really quite know where to take that. And then I met Julianne in college, and like so many people, you know, you meet a girl or a boy in theater and say, okay, I think I'll try that. But and finally, I mean, I knew that's what I wanted to do, and I just said, I'm gonna pursue the acting. And you know, I'll either and no backup. I didn't have a minor or anything. Said, you know, I'm either going to succeed or fail spectacularly. But I was, you know, in those days you're kind of indestructible, and or at least I had this sort of sense of invincibility, and failure really was never an option. Anything that really I thought about back there. I felt very comfortable on the stage, and I knew how to take a stage, and you know, and kept getting approval through it. So it was, if I had gone to I mean, I was also lucky that I went to a school where it was not a big theater school or anything, because had I done a series of, you know, spear carrying parts, maybe that allure, but I immediately went into principal parts. I mean, you know, leads and supporting roles that, you know, had meat on their bones, and so, you know, I always had something to chew on and to propel me forward.
Yeah, and so that then came before the sort of professional writing. So you were an actor before you were a professional.
Yeah. I you know, somewhere along the line, you know, it's easier to get on stage and say somebody else's lines than sit down in a lonely room and write your own. And the discipline, you know, the writing has a discipline that's not as social and not as much fun. I mean, the toughest part of acting is learning the lines, and I was a fairly quick study, so it never was a big issue with me.
Yeah. So when did it change for you from the movies to theatre?
When I went into stage, and I mean, you know, because back in my time, there were no such thing as film schools, really. I mean, unless you were very rich, you could, you know, there were few in New York and in LA, but it, you know, film study as a career choice and major in college was not something that was going to happen. So if you wanted to be in the movies, you went to, you know, you did that through stage. And so, you know, that's what I did. I, you know, got on the stage, and I liked, I mean, I found out fairly quickly that I am a stage actor. I mean, I like the feedback of the audience. I like that, the interplay of the actor and the audience. I like the whole piece rather than having to, you know, you do it in bits and pieces and continuity wise. It's, you know, I like that whole thing of starting out from the get-go, and you just move through a piece and I love rehearsal. I love the rehearsal room.
Yeah.
Which you don't get a lot of in film.
Yeah.
But it just, that's sort of where I like to be.
Yeah. I mean, I only did a small amount myself, and it was really only fringe stuff, but I loved rehearsing. That for me was the fun of doing it, finding the characters and just, you know, playing, again, back to playing with my fellow cast members, and then getting out there and getting on that journey of just kind of getting lost in that story. And before you know it, you're off at the end.
And learning how, I mean, you know, and learning how to read your audience, how to play, you know, say, okay, we got to pick this up, or we got to move faster, or that's, you know, not going to get a laugh, let's push on through, you know, and just that whole thing is just, I really like that. I like the control you have as an actor, you know, I mean, as opposed to, you don't know what's going to end up on a film of your work, you know. So it's just, you are in control of that moment when you're on stage. You know?
Yeah. Well, that's strange, because I kind of turned away from acting in a way because I didn't feel I had control as an actor, and I kind of came more into a directing kind of role, because I felt like that way I had I had more control.
Well, you know, it's another beast, and again, it's where your comfort zone is, kind of.
But I mean, I did love being on stage. I did love that interaction. Yeah, amazing. So I did notice, sort of just going through your bits and pieces, that you were on stage with Charlton Heston and Jeremy Brett.
Mm-hmm. In a Sherlock Holmes.
In a Sherlock Holmes. So how did that happen, and whenabouts in your career did that occur?
That was sort of my swan song as an actor, right before my writing career took off. But I was told that I and another actor who auditioned through an open call for that play were the first two people to break the equity open call at the Amundsen Theater, which is the big house or regional house in LA. And it was the director was a guy named Paul Giovanni, who had also written a play called The Crucifer of Blood. And he told me, he said, you know, of the 800 actors you see at an open call, and of the 150 you call back, only so many have real talent, and you have that, and I'm going to bust my ass to get you on this stage. And true to his word, he did. And I had a small scene at the end. I understudied a bunch of parts, and I had a small scene at the end where I come in and see the giant rat of Sumatra and then faint, and it's the curtain on the thing. And Heston and Brett just threw me the scene. It was a wonderful experience. Jeremy was as brilliant a Watson as he was a Holmes.
I was going to say, I can't imagine him in any other role apart from Sherlock Holmes.
Well, he was. He said to me, he said, you know, he said, in England, I get all these weight of the empire roles. It's lovely to come here and play Winnie the Pooh, which is exactly how I'm playing Watson. He was a wonderful, wonderful person and a great companion. When I was shooting my Sherlock Holmes films, which we'll get to, I hope, later, in England, and he was doing his series at the same time. And our two companies were suing each other over the very confused and complicated rights. And Jeremy and I were going out to dinner. So it was a great time.
Yeah, well, let's touch on that then. I mean, obviously you went into screenwriting, and so you've written for you wrote The Fly, and Psycho 3, and many others, and Dragonheart, which is where obviously we first met, because obviously you worked with my father, Paul Weston. How did that happen? What was the transition then? How did that work?
Well, during my acting career, I had been doing what we had a phenomenon over here. I don't know whether it ever played England or not, called dinner theater, which is where people went and had dinner and then they watched a show. And usually they were these very tatty comedies or sex farces and things like that. And I worked in something called Star Dinner Theater, which was I was equity, actors equity, and they would get either old movie stars or young up and coming TV stars or old TV stars. They used to say you get them either on the way up or the way down. And so I was working a lot and touring out of Dallas. I was living in Dallas at the time. And you would get on in one of these shows and tour for 6 months. It was a great thing for actors, dinner theater. Kept a lot of people employed. But the plays were so bad. So I started writing plays, cranking out mysteries and things like that, which never really went anywhere. But anyway, it regenerated the writing bug. And when I went out to LA in a show with Martha Ray, a thing called Everybody Loves Opal, a play that lasted 9 days on Broadway, and she'd been doing it 13 years in dinner theater. But I figured, I had gotten to that point where it was time to go to New York or LA, and I was working. So I went, and I figured it's better to go working than unemployed. So I went out and in this show with her, and after that show closed, and it was like starting all over again as an actor. And so I sat down and wrote my first screenplay. It got optioned. It was a sword and sorcery screenplay before Conan or any of those things had come out. In fact, the day that, in the meantime, I'd gotten cast in this other show where there's a lot of stuff that went on between that, but and the day that the Crucifer Blood closed, I got a call from an agent through a friend who read the script and really liked this script, and she wanted to see the script, and so the script was sent over to her that very day. Well, she took me on as a client. She thought this was going to be a big, she was going to have a bidding war going on for this script. It never happened. It did become a great calling card. In the meantime, there was a producer named Cy Weintraub, who had bought, at least he thought he had bought the rights to Sherlock Holmes, because it's like they were public domain in England, but over here in America, there were still stories under copyright. It's still a muddle. The state is a very confused state. Anyway, he bought them from Conan Doyle's last surviving daughter. And he was looking for writers. And she sent me, he was doing a Frankenstein script that needed a rewrite. And she sent me for that. And he needed a quick rewrite. I rewrote this thing in 12 days. And it actually started filming, I think, for a while. And then I don't know what happened, but it stopped and it never got finished. But he in the meantime, he had acquired all this Sherlock Holmes stuff. And he wanted to do these Sherlock Holmes films. Well, the British writers he hired gave him very faithful, but sort of these austere masterpiece theater kind of scripts. The American writers are kind of giving him Rockford Files and a deerstalker cap. And I somehow found the requisite blend of genuine Sherlock Holmes with enough action pumped into him, because his goal was to sell 2-hour movies to American television. So I became his go-to guy. And I had written him an adaptation of Sign of the Four, I guess it was. And he'd gone to England. That was going to be his opening film. And he had another script. He called me desperate, said, that script has fallen through. I need another script. What can you give me in 2 weeks? I said, well, I can give you Hound of the Baskervilles, because it's basically the structure's there, the outline's there, you know? And I gave it to him in 12 days. So 3 months later, I was in London, the only place I wanted to be, watching the first 2 movies I'd ever written get filmed. Not the first 2, but pretty near the first 2 movies. I mean, we had phenomenal cast. I mean, I had Ian Richardson playing Holmes, and we had actors like Eleanor Braun and Denham Elliott and all the Brian Blessed and Marty Shaw. And just it was Nikki Clay. It was a wonderful cast of people, and people, names I just heard of, reading about. I mean, some of them I knew. In fact, the role that Brian Blessed played was a role that I needed. I changed a few things because the Hound of the Baskervilles was so well known. I said, I need more red herrings. I need more suspects. So I created this character. And every time as I kept writing, I kept saying, Brian Blessed would be perfect for this. Brian Blessed would be perfect for this. And I mentioned it to the British producer, and they got me Brian Blessed. I was just over the moon. But anyway, so I'm at Shepperton Studio shooting these movies. I mean, it also happened because I have the producer had, for years, he'd I'll tell you 2 stories about him. He had produced Tarzan movies for years, and the Tarzan TV series. Well, when I was a kid reading books, and what probably started me collecting books was Tarzan. And so I'd read all the Tarzan books. I'd read all the Sherlock Holmes. And I knew everything about Cy's Tarzan career, which was flattering for him. But the other thing was, he had this huge German Shepherd that was his guard dog, named Timmy. And Timmy had initially earned his patina as the bionic dog in the $6 Million Man series.
Oh gosh,
and,
well, yeah.
And he was now retired, and he was Cy's guard dog. Well, and this was a dog, if you were left in the room, you didn't make any fast moves because he was a guard dog. But Cy had been told by the trainer, don't trust anybody the dog doesn't take to, because the dog is an excellent judge of character. Well, the dog loved me. I mean, it was nuzzling my crotch, and he was just a sweetheart with me. So I think that helped get me the gig, the Sherlock Holmes gig. But I think mostly it was, I just gave him scripts that, and I sort of, when I was there in London, I mean, the first day I went in, on my first jet lag day, he said, these scripts are where we want them to be. You're going to go in with the director of the first film, which was Sign of Four, with Desmond Davis. Now, Desmond is, he has some changes he wants to talk to you about. We like them. We like these scripts. I mean, so if you don't like any of his changes, you don't have to do them. What a great cachet for a beginning writer. I mean, and he didn't get his changes. Um, so that's the kind of producer Cy was. Cy had always been, his theory was, learn as much as you can about the business so that when someone comes up to you and says, well, we can't do that, you say, yeah, you can, here's how you do it, and this is the lens you use, and I mean, he made me go into editing, take a pad and pencil and go into editing. I said, I don't know anything about editing. He said, it's easy, it's logical, just go in and I went in and wrote down 6 things, and they used 4 or 5 of them. Yeah. I think he was grooming me to be his point man in London as sort of the story editor, whatever, because he didn't want to spend all that time in London. I'm here in the only place I ever wanted to be, going to theater like people go to the movies, and so it was a dream job for me. But
how difficult is it though to deal with changes in your work? I mean, because that must be quite galling if you've spent time writing something that then you hand over to a director or producers that suddenly want to change.
Well, I always say I love my work, I hate my job. And my work is me in the page, alone, doing what I do. And my work is defending it against all the mauling clutches that want to tear it apart or change it. And it's always been sort of the frustration of my career. My career might have been longer had I been more benign about changes and not as aggressive, and because I spend more time with that script than anybody, and I always say, you're paying me not just as a dramatist, you're also paying me for my knowledge of dramaturgy.
Yeah.
And I've known of story meetings where the writer wasn't in the story meeting, and you're going, how can that be? Or they say, can we change? You can show them, we want to change this on page 52. I'm going, well, if you change that on page 52, here's what's going to happen to page 65, and to page 78, and to page 97, and your whole third act, which will unravel. And you can show them that all the way down the line, and they'll still want you to do it, so I got to be known as, I was actually elected to the Writers Guild for a couple of years because I became known as sort of the pit bull of writers' creative rights. It was my one big issue all the time. And it's like the writer should be an equal part of the process. When you go into the room with a producer, the actor, the director, your opinion should have the same weight and same value. I always say they forget the script they love. They get a great script and they go, oh, this is perfect, this is great. And then in that long process of page to screen, they start giving bits away. This actor wants to change, this producer wants to change. And suddenly, 6 months to a year later, they're sitting in a screening room going, it was such a great script, what happened to it? And you gave away what you loved about it, I mean, and I've had people say, God, this script is great. And I'm going, then don't change anything. If it's a great script, you don't make changes to it, I mean, it's that simple. And I'm fairly flexible about, I mean, you wouldn't think so. I mean, people, there are those who think I'm difficult about it, but I'm, tell me your changes, tell me your ideas. Just give me the power to say no about it. And that's what, Cy gave me with the Sherlock Holmes films, which is why the Sherlock Holmes films, even though they weren't, big paying films for my beginning films, are still probably my 2 favorite films, because I had power. I had the power to protect my work, which was really nice. I mean,
I mean, I'm absolutely on your side. I think it's so wrong not to have the writers more involved than they are, especially, you know, with films. If I'm directing anything, and you know, you have somebody turn around and say, oh, can I just change that line? It's like, no, that's what was written. The writer has written it for a reason. There's a rhythm, there's, you know, especially in theatre, there's a rhythm to the language.
Exactly. And you know, there, and again, in my films, I'm very dialogue conscious in my films, and there was rhythm all the time. I remember once on Dragonheart when the director came to me and said, we just had trouble with this line, you know, and suddenly I changed it around, and I just caught something. I went and said, oh, what you guys were doing was saying the line wrong, and you changed it back to what it was. That's why the rhythm suddenly worked with it, you know. You know, so yes, and it's again, you know, I'm delighted with what actors can bring to things and surprises, but you know, try it my way first. And I will say that in the theater, unlike film, I have very good relationships with directors, and I've never had any kind of creative control problems that I can think of with my scripts, because we're speaking the same language, and we come from the same heritage. We know the same. We know the same stuff. We know our Shakespeare Ibsen.
Yeah, the film must be a different culture, really. It's and it's more money. Or, you know, does it come down to money?
Well, I think it comes down to money. I think it comes down also to ego. I mean, there's a lot of directors just, you know, they want that auteur thing, and so it's they want to claim they're the author of the film, and no single man is the author of the film. I mean, one of the things I used to fight when I was on the board of the Guild was what we call the vanity credit, which is a film by. No, I mean, it's not, you know, there's a lot of hundreds and hundreds of people who made that film. Not you, you know, you weren't the sole, you weren't there feeding the crew and doing the stunts and writing the script, you know, you were just a guy directing. You know? And that's not to belittle the director's job. The director has a lot of stuff. I mean, people have often asked me, why didn't you direct? And I'd say, you know, I think I'm at times an inspired writer. I don't think I would be as a director. Can I direct some of the films that were done better than some of the directors I had? Probably. But self-preservation really isn't an excuse to direct. I think it really has to be something you're passionate about. A passionate writer. You know?
Yeah. So have you ever written anything for yourself to play? I mean, have you ever written anything for yourself as an actor?
Not in film. I did, as you may have seen, I did a adaptation of Tartuffe, and it came about that I had already been cast as Orgon, and the director came to me one day. He said, "Can we have lunch? I don't really like this adaptation I picked." And I went, "Oh, thank God," because I didn't like it either. It's an awful adaptation. And so we're sitting down there talking about, you know, what we're going to do. And I said, well, you know, because of rights and things like that, you just can't cobble different things together. I said, you want me to take a crack at this? Which apparently had been his ulterior motive. And I went home and wrote my first scene, and had such a great time that, you know, I sent it to him, and he said, yeah, let's go with it. And it was really kind of a revelation. So that was the only part I actually wrote for myself. And there were many times the actor was cursing the writer and vice versa.
So when it came to the screenplay for The Fly and say Dragonheart, those big movies, huge movies, were they original or were they adaptations?
The Fly was of course you know, it was a short story first, and then it was a film. The and the original film follows the short story. which is he goes into the transmitter and comes out with a big fly's head, and the guy's human head is on a little fly. Which, when we looked at the film, I said, well, this is kind of bad science and bad drama. Because suddenly you've got an actor with this big fly's head on it that, he has no way to emote, and he ends up writing stuff on a chalkboard to communicate. I said, that's kind of, and by default, the movie goes over to his wife's descent into madness as she searches for the tiny human-headed fly. So that's where we came up with the idea of just mutate the genes and have it be gradual.
Yeah. So
that was an adaptation, yeah. And then the Dragonheart, I had a young director who was originally slated to direct the movie. It was his idea. And he said, I've got this movie about a dragon and a knight. I said, I'll do it, because I'd been dying to do a swashbuckler. He had the heart exchange worked out, and the scam where they go to the villages and scam team up to, I'll slay the dragon and you'll give me the gold. And I sat down and fleshed out the story and got the whole, and that's kind of, evolved into two of us fashioning this story together. And I went off and wrote the script.
Yeah. And then how do things like that get optioned? You mentioned optioned earlier. How does that work?
Well, this was an option. This was, I don't know, had it been bought, or I don't know. But Raffaella De Laurentiis was connected to it before I ever came on it. And I think, the original director sort of pushed me onto her, for which I think she was eternally grateful. But, sadly, the young director, when they got the script, they felt it was too big a movie for him, and he got relegated to a producing credit and pushed off the film, which is sad, because I think he and I saw exactly the same movie, because we started out as collaborators from the beginning, so it was, I got paid to do that script, so I don't know whether she already owned the property or what the story was there, but it was beyond the option stage if they're paying me a salary to go write the script.
It does sound like a minefield, though, working on those big budget films, to bring everybody together and everything together. It's, as you say, maybe it's down to egos, isn't it, in lots of ways.
This also, it's also the technological problems. Originally we're talking Jim Henson and puppets, because I think I wrote that script in 1990. It didn't get shot till 1994, and of course CGI had just come in, and there was a big problem with that, because at the time, because it was fairly new, and you had to figure out exactly how many seconds you were going to see the dragon on screen and how many seconds he wasn't, and blah. So it was because it was such an expensive thing, you had to budget all that. So it's very complicated. There are a lot of reasons a film goes wrong. Very often it's ego, very often it's something else, but it is a dicey thing, and the bigger the more money in it, the more they are afraid of it. I remember when we had our first meeting with the executives about Dragonheart, and I'd written the script, and it was already getting buzz. I was meeting people in the halls of Universal that I didn't know what we were talking about. And at that meeting, Tom Pollock, who was president of Universal, burst into the meeting, which is something he never did in these kind of meetings, these kind of creative meetings, and said, the first thing out of his mouth was, "Who's Chuck Pogue?" And then when the very day the script got greenlit, the first thing I heard when everybody else is celebrating was, "We're sending the script out to David Koepp and Tom Stoppard because we want like 12 more funny lines, a dozen more funny lines or so." Well, thankfully, Mr. Kep sent the script back and said, "You've already got him." I don't know why Mr. Stoppard turned it down, but I'm sure he had bigger fish to fry.
There probably wasn't enough words. I mean,
Yeah. So anyway, I stayed on as the writer for better or worse.
yeah. So did you have to relocate when you were working on those sort of films? Did you have to go to LA to do that, or were you able to stay in Kentucky?
Oh no, I mean, I had moved to LA, and my film writing career, I was all in LA.
Yeah. Yeah, because you've kind of had three stages then, haven't you, of your career? So you were an actor,
Uh-huh.
you were a screenwriter, and now you're a playwright or a dramatist?
That's pretty much it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if I had it to do over again, I might have kept my mitt in all three, or tried to juggle all three at the time. I don't know that you could really. You kind of go with the horse you're riding, and the screenwriting was the horse. But I think I should have at least been in my fallow times writing plays more, or something like that. But the thing is, it is such an exhaustive thing when you write a screenplay like that, and then you go through the gauntlet of notes or whatever, and you take care of that. By the time you're through with it, there is, first of all, there's the postnatal depression that you go through, and then there's just the exhaustion, and so you have to kind of go out and fill the vessel. So it's very tough sometimes to just jump from one project into another project. So those times when I could have been writing a play or something like that.
So what did you do then in between? I mean, what did you do for your own sanity to kind of, fill those gaps, or
well, I read, usually just refill the vessel, I mean, it's, you just read stuff and say, oh, and because you read, everything you read is like, will this make a movie? It's that sort of thing. And so you're looking at stuff like that. You're trying to find material. You're just trying to amuse yourself and just.
Yeah. Is that how you've ended up with 5,000 books?
No, I started reading, again, my reading goes back to Tarzan. And actually, I owe my movie and my book collecting career to Edgar Rice Burroughs, because back when I was about 9 years old, every Saturday afternoon, the television would play a Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan movie. And I got hooked on these things. And then after the Tarzan movie, they'd show another movie. So it could be anything, like a Humphrey Bogart movie or an Errol Flynn movie. And that's how I started getting into movies. But then I'd say, okay, Tarzan, I'm going to go out and get those books. Or they'd show something like Beau Geste, and I'd go out and get that book. Or Raymond Chandler, and Sherlock Holmes, whatever. I mean, I grew up on the Basil Rathbone things, So, and that's, the movies would introduce me to a book, and the book would take me to another author or to another movie, maybe sometimes, it just, and it just kept, that's how my literary and cinematic career sort of fed off of each other all my life.
Yeah. And I can see I don't want to say comic books, because that sounds like derogatory, but on the rack behind you, what are
the
those?
rack behind me, those are paperbacks, and these are pulp magazines like Weird Tales and Fantastic Fiction, and they have, science fiction, fantasy, a lot of Robert Howard, Conan stuff, and then back there is fiction. Further to the over here next to the rack is the theater. The theater is my elevated reading. That's a serious reading. I mean, most of my stuff is, I read pulpy, popular. It's somewhere between what I'd say is late 19th century to mid 20th century mystery, adventure, fantasy kind of stuff. I mean, there's everything. There's Edgar Rice Burroughs, there's Rider Haggard, there's Raphael Sabatini, there's Terry Pratchett,
Wow.
Chandler and Hammett, and all that stuff is there.
Do you employ a librarian?
Huh?
Do you employ a librarian?
I know where they are. I know, my sorting, cataloging is kind of strange, but you tell me, do you have this? I said, yeah, I do, and I know exactly where to go. It's more or less categorized toward authors, I'd say.
Wow, wow. I've got a very small book collection here. I mean, I do have more books, but these are my older ones.
Yeah, well, I will never go to the tablet. I can't. The idea of reading on a tablet, I like the smell and feel and
yes,
that tactile experience.
Yeah, yeah. So what are you doing right now? What's on your to-do list right now?
I'm trying to get back into a epic piece of theater that I'm writing. It's like one of those 2-day, 3-hour, total 6-hour epic Nicholas Nickleby kind of things that I'm doing on a mythological subject. Because I do have a penchant for writing impossible stuff. I also have a Sherlock Holmes play that I wrote right before COVID locked down everything. And I'm trying to get the wheels, I'm actually trying to get, there are several people interested, but it's, trying to get that into a theater and mounted somewhere is what I'd like to do with that.
Yeah.
But during COVID, strangely enough, all this fallow time that I had, and I really couldn't write. I just, I sat there and would binge and do odd stuff like that, as opposed to, it was a perfect time to write this epic that I'm trying to write, but I just, not today. Yeah. I think I'll just see what's on Facebook, that sort of thing. But I think everybody had sort of, between the malaise of Donald Trump and COVID, America was sort of laid low, I think, for a long time.
Hiding under tables, I would imagine.
Yeah. Biting fingernails was the major pastime.
Yeah. So coming out of lockdown then, so how easy is it, if you finish this epic, would it be then to produce it and get it on? I mean, is that
impossible? Impossible, but it's, where I am right now in my career is I'm going back, and I had I used to have a wish list under the plexiglass on my desk, which was all these things, and this is one of those projects. It originally started out as a 6-hour, it's going to be a 6-8-hour miniseries. And there was some interested, I wrote this very early in my career, and there was some interest at the time. It never happened. But right now I'm just going down the wish list and writing what I want to write, the way I want to write it. If something happens with it, great. If nothing happens with it, maybe it will 50 years after I'm dead. Who knows? But it's just stuff I have to get out, that I want to get out and do, and but I've had, the playwriting has been a lovely career. I've really, and we've had some success. We've had several plays, a couple plays published. He says, stuttering like Porky Pig, but in several of them, most of them have been produced, except for one or two. So it's been a real joy being able to luxuriate in the language. And
is there anything else you do for your own sort of creativity apart from writing? Is there another creative outlet you have, or is it sort of writing and reading?
It's pretty much, reading and writing. It's just the thing. All my hobbies are my career, basically. I used to have some artistic talent that sort of descended into doodling, basically. But I used to be able to draw pretty well.
Yeah.
And I collect DVDs. I have a huge film collection too, so I'm always watching movies.
And I know you love going to the theatre, which is one of the reasons.
Theaters is really a big thing for me.
Yeah, the West End, London West End for you is.
I keep saying we're going to England. We're going to London. We never get out of London because I'm booking theater. We see, every time we go, we probably see 12, 13 plays.
Yeah. We'll finish very, very soon. I just wanted to find out whether in the US, a bit like over here, whether theatre has kind of transferred online. Have you seen any of that?
There, there have been some stuff. What I have seen, I haven't been overwhelmed with. I mean, what kept us alive was the national putting stuff online and finally taking National Theatre live online.
Yeah.
And it's just, there was a lot of English theater that was suddenly, they were doing productions. We saw a lot of terrific things from the National and Hampstead Theatre showed some stuff. And some other
I watched Jane Eyre that the National did. I watched Jane Eyre. That was very good. And I think I watched The Tempest from the Globe.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, but I had an actor, director, theatre company owner on the podcast a few episodes ago, and she works with a group of actors out of a pub in London called the Redmond Branch, doing sort of fringe theatre, and they have transferred all of their performances online because they couldn't do anything else, really for their own well-being of actually carrying on doing something creative.
Right.
And I watched it, and each actor was in their own home, in their own rooms, and they produced this amazing piece of theatre. I thought it was incredible.
Well, some of it's good. Some of it, I mean, a lot of what I've seen that's done over here is, dare I say, amateurish, but it's small theaters, and I want to see. I don't want the last thing I want to see people sitting in their living rooms, sort of. It's not. I want the illusion.
You want to smell the grease paint, yeah.
I'm a great fan of the televised theater, but give me sets, give me costumes, that sort of thing.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, well, thank you so much for your time today, Chuck. If people wanted to get in contact, if you wanted to be contacted, or if you want people to find out more about you, where can they go? Obviously, I've put your...
Well, I would say the Pogue Plays is the best place there. I'd love for producers to come on and, they can come on and read bits of my plays and look at the stuff there. I'd like to get some of that stuff done more. So, yeah, plenty of producers, but anybody who wants to contact me, there is a link to an email so that they can.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I'll let you get on with your day, because here it's 6 o'clock in the evening. What time is it for you?
It'll be 1 o'clock.
Lunchtime. Fabulous. Well, thank you.
I hope you got everything you needed.
Oh, I got more, and I'm sure I've still got questions that I could have delved into deeper, but I'm aware of your time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.